sunlight, so cold, sleep is nice. So tired, my eyes fight, they just wanna close back up tight. Get up, hoodie on, hard work at the crack of dawn. This life ain't for the weak ones, no, this life pure only for the strong.
What is going on, everybody? The night is upon us now, and thank you all for welcoming yourselves into the show for the evening. This is the return of Touchdown Talk with yours truly, Lindy Endzone,
Yes, sir.
and a man I have done content with before, at least almost 3 years ago now, because time certainly does fly. Dante has come back, and I believe the last bit of content I have done with you was the food for thought draft coverage segment, because that was a long time ago, and I know that
Yeah.
your channel at that point was in its infancy, really, and it has come a long way from that point.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it has grown quite a bit, It's been a slow burn, but I think I like it that way. Instead of like going viral and then the next thing you know, you got 20,000 people sitting on your lap and then it's like you know, of your channel and you're doing a disservice to everybody involved, but yeah, I like the slow burn and we're kind of like still learning ourselves and then of course with the rebrand, you know what I'm saying? Like it's worked its way out. So I appreciate you having me back on, man. Especially for your re-inaugural live, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So speaking of that, for those who don't know, uh, Dante's channel now has a more grander name to it, introduced as Gridiron Apex. And the last couple of years, for those viewing again who may not know, as to give them a small introduction of what they can expect coming from you and your team of guys over for the product that you got on YouTube.
Yeah, man. So, originally, as you guys can see, the ECG, that's what everybody used to know us as, our East Coast Gridiron before. Um, the expectation with the rebrand, and I guess, the expectations moving forward was just we wanted to be more broad than just East Coast, because we used to get some comments sometimes, and we talk about everything in football over here. So,
Mhm.
I know as much as the normal USC fan about their team all the way on the West Coast, and sometimes we get comments, even though it could be the most extravagant conversation ever, and what we were talking about. There's still a guy that would be like, well, what do these East Coast guys know about USC football? And it's like, well, I actually know quite a bit. My guy Eli Sanders that transferred there from New Mexico, and I had a couple ties to that, and it was just we didn't want to stranglehold ourselves to just being East Coast, even though the original theory around East Coast was me and Don started this. I grew up in Maryland. He grew up in Pennsylvania. You know what I'm saying? So it was like that's where our roots were. But as things have grown and done things, we just felt like Gridiron Apex, and we went through about 30 different names, man. I mean, we even got our
Mhm.
our audience involved into voting, and not the most popular one won by the votes. It was more so what comes off the tongue better, what you know what just seems like a great name for a channel, and we kind of decided on this, and we worked in the logo, and it's as familiar as this to what we have now. That was an important part of the rebrand as well, was making sure that the people that knew us as East Coast Gridiron still knew that the logo was kind of similar to what we had before too. So it was a very smooth transition, man. And even more so, I think after the rebrand, we for whatever reason we saw our numbers just like spike as well, with the
Mhm.
videos and lives. And um I think people have really taken a liking to it, but even more so, man, just the same thing we've been doing before. I mean, we're more involved in the media than we ever have. Like me and Sora headed to the combine next week, so we'll be there Wednesday to
Mhm.
Sunday, covering that. And of course, the everybody knows the film studies around this time. We have a guy on our channel that always says, well, draft time is ECG time, but you know, this is what I love, man. All year long we're watching college football. I remember when you came back, we were talking about Ty Simpson in Alabama and
Yep.
how you got more involved in it because you started picking up things with Tennessee and
Yep.
you started to get a lot of exposure that way as well. But yeah, man, just more so of what you saw before, but we want to be more consistent than we ever have. We want to be the guys that people come to. It might not be your favorite channel or for like your go-to channel, but around this time, I feel like with not only the sliders episodes that we do, but just the in-depth draft talk. I mean, this is my first year doing a draft guide, that a lot of people have clung on to. So, just more of that, man. I think we've just kind of opened up the door wide for being everything football at this point. I think a lot of people respect that as well. So I definitely appreciate everybody that's rocked out with us over the years because it's been a bumpy road. And I just, like I told you before, I think it was just time to have a fresh start too and to carry on with the momentum that we gained these last couple of years.
Yeah, there's a few things in there I want to touch on, but like firstly, the name in it, again, like it can be easy, it can be difficult, but when you go into picking something, sometimes it has to be gravitational. And the name itself, it does match you guys very well. So I did support the name choice there because there was a bit of a vote up on your channel, and it came to like four different ones, and I looked
Yeah.
at the four of them, and then I seen Gridiron Apex. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can definitely see why this one out of the remaining four.
Yeah,
Uh,
the most popular one was Gridiron Chronicles, and I was
mhm,
like, man, it kind of makes it sound like we're more of like a paper, like internet publishing company for sports more than anything. And I was like, Gridiron Compass was kind of the same thing. I really liked that one. Gridiron Index is one that we
mhm,
internally liked a lot. And then I was like, you know what? We're kind of the apex of everything football. So why don't we use that? And I like that name Apex and it's
yep,
short. And whenever you hear gridiron, that was like the core of every obviously throughout the name, like gridiron was like the core of what we wanted to be because even when I told you in the past, I didn't want anybody else to get confused that you come here, it's all football. We're not talking about soccer, basketball.
right.
When you hear gridiron, it's all football anyway. So I just felt like that rang more true than just the popular void of Gridiron Chronicles. See, my wife,
Mhm.
she liked Gridiron Chronicles when we were talking about. She's like, I like that one the best. But even my dad called me. He was like, you know what, Gridiron Apex is really a better name
Mhm.
than what people give it credit for. So I was like, I appreciate that.
I mean, I think Chronicles would have served a better purpose if your primary focus was more of the historical side of the game of football. That I think that would
That
fit.
makes
I
sense
think that
too.
would have fit a lot better. But
Yep.
Apex has a grit to it that matches Gridiron very well. So yeah, I am happy with seeing that. So the and
Yeah.
then the other two things were, funny enough, I'm native to Pennsylvania, and my wife is native to Maryland. So there's kind of a interesting connection going on there. And
Yeah,
then
that
and
it
then
is.
for me, when it comes to getting into Tennessee football and being an implant here, so to speak, for almost 6 years now. It's such a strong culture around Knoxville. They love their volunteers here. Anything volunteers related when it comes to sports, football, basketball, baseball, softball, it's it's just it's almost night and day with a lot of other fan bases, really. And I can only speak to the degree that I live here. So if the context doesn't really if the context doesn't match reality with the other programs when it comes to college football, I apologize. But how I was able to just really absorb myself into college football and gravitate towards it. It allowed me to really invest more time at the collegiate level of football versus just staying strictly to the NFL. and just watching Tennessee's season unfold, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to me.
Yeah.
So, and I would say, like, with your channel, the evolution of content that you provide has grown very well. But of course, as we know, some of the best things require the most time to accomplish, because at the end of the day, that perseverance and that patience proves ultimate success. And you guys have, from your infancy, you guys have come quite a long way. Because I still remember the days that you're in the subscriber counts of like 2,100 or so, and then I'm looking recently, you're already over 6,000. Like, wow,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a, it is a slow grind, and
Hmm.
it's like what I tell people. It's harder to grow a channel like this because we talk about every team that we can. I mean, when it comes to, it being April and May, we're going to start breaking down like all the divisions and all the conferences, as a whole, and we're going to pretty much touch all 100 and what is it, 137 schools now in FBS. So it's like,
Yep.
that's hard to do and keep up with everything. But like, if I talked about every single sport, I wouldn't have time to even be, I don't want to say we're experts, but a quasi know what we're talking about. Like, I can almost name you at least a couple players from each team in FBS college right now. So, but that goes to paying attention to recruiting and
Yep.
understand those guys at the high school level. Like, last year was awesome because I got to be at the regional for the Elite 11 for the first time, and I get to see some of the quarterbacks that are coming into college next year as freshmen, and some of these running backs and offensive linemen that I got to see there when I was filming and taking notes and talking to these guys. Like, being at events like that makes you it makes me appreciate the game even more, because not only did I coach at the high school level, but I played at the high school level. So like,
Mhm.
you know, that is the foundation of our sport, regardless of what people want to say. High school level football is the foundation. And, we came into this thinking that, and I also do the high school film reviews too, of like guys that reach out to me. Like, I have a list of film that I watch for guys for free, and I don't charge them a dime because I know how it was. Like, sometimes my parents couldn't afford for a camp, but if I could get any external coach, and it takes a lot of balls for a 16-year-old kid to be like, "Hey, can you tell me what I'm doing wrong that my coaches are not telling me?" Or,
Right.
Can you give me some extra coaching? So when I started doing that, I was like, man, maybe I should really join some high school events like the Elite 11 and things like that. And, when I started connecting all three of them together, I think people, they might not watch those high school film reviews or even care that I'm at the Elite 11, but they know at some point in time that I'm connecting all three of the pillars of our sport, high school, college, and NFL, and in some
Mhm.
sort. And so I think with that too, like I said, we might not be everybody's favorite channel, but when you turn on a video and you see us talk, you're like, okay, yeah, I know this dude was here. I know he was talking about high school at one point. I know he was out there watching those kids. I know he is doing high school film reviews. It makes you feel a little bit better that we're boots on the ground with a lot of this too. And so it might be a very, very analytical from that standpoint, but I think
Yep.
a lot of people appreciate it. Like you were saying, it's a slow burn, and we're still trying to find like kind of where we fit out in this space. And that, Lindy, like I was telling the guys the other day, the amount of times that we've almost thrown a line out there in the water and tried to see what fish would bite was because we're still trying to discover what our audience liked about us. And then it came to the conclusion that it's like, you're either going to like it or you're not, and that's where we kind of threw off the Batman cape and we're like, we are who we are at this point in time. So, but the cool thing about our channel is you don't have to watch every video. You can pick and choose and go back in our Rolodex and see if we talked about your team at some point
Mhm.
and just consume that content. So, like I said, it's hard to grow a channel like this because, as much as I want to say, hey, man, we would be at 15, 20,000 subscribers at this point if we were just a team specific channel. because I think the quality is there from everything that we do, from the graphics to the live streams to everything. I think we should be at a higher subscriber count because of that. But I don't think a lot of people know, like, the amount of people that go viral in this space is such it's less than 1%. So if you see that content creator that just blows up, just know they're like 1 in a million basically, because you can go out there and see like guys that just started a podcast yesterday. There's probably like 5 or 10 of those guys right now that are trying to find their way up. So I always
Mhm.
appreciate when I knew I was at 1 subscriber or 0 subscribers at one point, just like everybody else. But one thing I can
Yeah.
one thing I can say, and Linda, you probably came back, you're like, dang, ECG or, Gridiron Apex at, where we are now, man, we always gonna put out some content. You know what I'm saying? We always gonna be consistent. No matter who was here before, who was here or who's not here. The one thing that was the constant I knew that was important was me. You know what I'm saying? So, but also having the appreciation of knowing that everybody that was either the part of this had me on their live stream,
Mhm.
had a debate with me. Everybody was important to the growth of this channel. So I'll never shoot the guy in the back that helped me at one point, but
Right.
sometimes you just got to know, like, the previous guys that were here, we might have had conversations about this might not be the avenue for you. So those are the difficult things that people don't see behind the scenes, but like that all has to do with the growth of the channel and understanding your audience as well. So, but I know I'm not a one man band, but that everybody had. I feels like you and like our whole community. Everybody, I always feel like everybody's had a hand in helping this out. Like everybody's a part of this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, there's a lot of integral components there for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
the level you look at it, over 6,400 videos. That tells you all you need to know. So,
Yeah.
as far as I go, by the way, I haven't even hit 300 yet. So that
You're
that's
gonna
just
get there,
that's
man.
ju- that's just the level difference right there. That's just the difference. But I wanted to make this a bit of a educational program, which is a little different to a degree in some of my previous touchdown talk segments. But beforehand, I did want to get your take on the result of the Jacksonville Jaguars this year, because some
Yeah.
funny memories of mine were taking part in some of the draft day streams in which it was a comedy fest on your end with some of the selections for the Jags in those specific classes.
Yeah, yeah.
However, it seems to me at least, and correct me if I'm wrong on some elements, but it seems to me at least that with all new things considered with the organization, the fresh head coach Liam Cohen, specifically being one of them, that I felt in a sense that for this year they exceeded expectations a little bit. And I know they were projected to win about 12 games. They finished 13-4. They were the sixth best offense and the eighth best defense in terms of points per game and points allowed. Only one of their losses, not counting the playoff game, of course, only one of their losses was more than a one-score game. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at it on paper, and they had a pretty good year, but I wanted your overall take, from the beginning of getting to know you, and how close you are in fandom to the Jaguars specifically, and seeing a video that you made about Jacksonville might having to select a quarterback early with the whole up and downness of Trevor Lawrence. So what how did you think they did to conclude this past season?
Yeah, I was actually surprised, man, because I wasn't very high. I thought that let's go into when they hired Liam Cohen.
Mhm.
I love the hire. I saw what he did with the Buccaneers. I knew that, he came from, I think it was the McVay tree at the time. So, it was a lot of good things to look forward to from that aspect. And Baker Mayfield, of course, has been an up and down quarterback throughout his career, but coming off his best year with Liam Cohen, I was like, if anybody could turn a guy around like Trevor, it might be him. But I just thought it was a little bit too late. And then they hired James Gladstone. So I have not a personal relationship with James Gladstone, but as a lot of people know, I went through the NFL scouting program 2 years ago, and James Gladstone was one of the guys that, he was an assistant GM for the Rams, but he was one integral part of me understanding how to scout players even more, and understanding kind of like, the financial aspect of the NFL that a lot of people don't know about. But he's a young guy. I mean, me and him are around the same age, and so I kind of clung on to everything that he was saying. It's not the fact that we don't respect our elders, but if somebody's around your age and at a higher, you don't want to put people on the pedestal, but like, obviously this dude's making buku money and is in the NFL. He's in a position that a lot of people would love to be in at his age. Like, you're not 30 something years old and now you're a GM for a high rising NFL team right now, unless you know what the hell you're doing, right? Why take a chance on a 30 or early 30 guy, year old guy to run your front office? But and so when they hired him, I was like, wow, this is kind of like it's kind of a weird moment for me, because I'm like, I'm happy for James, but I had my reservations as well because of his age. I mean, anybody would. But when he came in and then Tony Boselli started stepping into being kind of a player personnel type of guy, I was like, wow, the trifecta of all those three might actually work. Then you go into hearing the talks about Brian Thomas Jr. being traded and all this stuff, man. And then the one thing that you're just looking at that point in time is like, okay, well, what about Trevor Lawrence? Then we go into the draft and we trade everything away to go get Travis Hunter. And I'm like, this is not going to work. But a positive came out of the negative this year, even with that in his injury, that we didn't need Travis to be successful, because Trevor had his best the last 5 games of the season was the best that he ever played in his career. He was on an MVP path, at that point in time, and we were the number 1 offense for those 5 weeks. And so I was like, wow, Liam Cohen has not only found depth, and I loved our draft for the most part. Bishal Tutton, I was a big fan of his, and a couple of those other guys. But the way our defense turned around after losing so many guys, and the way that offense played, and it wasn't like a true number 1 guy. And you've been a part of those draft streams. When we drafted Parker Washington, that was the only person I was excited about over the last couple of years. And he finally showed up to being really our number 1 receiver towards the end of the season. So, yeah, man, I'm excited for our future. I'm still not sold on Trevor. I mean, it took you 5 seasons to get up to this point, but my expectations for him are low. But this is one of those things where it's like, he doesn't have to play great, because the whole team, the way that Liam Cohen and the rest of the coaches have this team going, is that we can win without a great quarterback performance. And I don't know if people realize that yet. And so, and another thing is when we picked up Seth Hennigan from Memphis, who I was really, really high on as well. And I was like, we need young blood to come in this room and just threaten the fact that, like, this is not CJ Beathard that's just going to assume the second string position. We had, you had Nick Mullins and you had Seth Hennigan there to kind of like push the needle up. And I think that, the hairs on the back of your neck kind of stand up as the starter at that point. And you start to hear it's, come on, Lindy. It is impossible for these guys to not hear the noise when they're in the front, walking around the facility. Like, Trevor is a bust, but how can he not hear that, bro? He can say that he does it, he ignores the noise, all that, but like you had to know not only the writings on the wall when they get 2 brand new quarterbacks that's never been in this room before, and also the noise is just bearing down on you. And now they're threatening to trade away your number 1 target. Like, yeah, it almost seems like they were trying to set him up to fail. But I really think that a lot of, and you know a lot about it being an Eagles fan with the AJ Brown thing. How much of this stuff just getting fabricated by the media to help these guys elevate themselves in the big moments? Yeah. I always wonder that too. Maybe somebody's like telling a reporter, like, yeah, there's a problem in the locker room, and you saw it with AJ Brown. There's really not, but of course he hears it and it's gonna piss him off, and he's gonna come out the next game and catch a touchdown pass when you really didn't think he was going to seal the game. So I think some of the stuff is fabricated, but it hey, if it helped them out those last 5 games to get us into a playoff contention, by all means. And a couple things had to go our way. Like Daniel Jones had to get hurt with the Colts because they were definitely looking like the number 1 team in the AFC when he was healthy, right? But yeah, this is definitely one of those situations that I'm glad to see, but I still am apprehensive to. I got to see consistency at this point. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, when you talk about the AJ Brown scenario, and this goes for any other quarterback or any other player per se, you don't want to you don't want to get stuck in this reliance of external pressure in that regard. More specifically to the media, it's almost you want to set the perception of that they're all grown adults and they can
Absolutely.
they can handle the big stage in the uh not really the most dire of circumstances, but when you're speaking about Trevor Lawrence, that at some point, if you don't turn it around, just like any player in the league, more times than not, you're on borrowed time.
What
But
happened to Carson Wentz is the perfect example.
and it's up to you. It's up to you to make that difference. Like you are your own employer. And I was thinking of this myself earlier about Mekhi Becton and the Chargers moving off of him. And I'm thinking, well, would this be a good decision for the Eagles to bring him back? And I'm thinking to myself, yes and no. And I'm more leaning towards no, because it's how you advertise yourself as a player. If you're only going to be good in one system, like under a specific coach, under a specific organization, and you're not going to stretch your value across the rest of the league, you're going to be out of a job unless you get stuck on a practice squad. So yeah, I mean, he was a part of a Super Bowl winning team, but if you're not going to carry that same level of play for another organization that's depending on you, based on your prior resume of work being just the past season, and you're trying to help Justin Herbert, and you were a part of a really disastrous offensive line that succumbed to injuries more times than not, it's not a good recipe for yourself when it comes to that kind of success in just staying up there in the higher tier of players. So like for him, it's just unfortunate that way.
Yeah, and we've had to go through how many coaches and things like this for him to show his face, and it's like
Yeah.
I used to tell people all the time, Urban Meyer doesn't throw the ball for Trevor. Doug Peterson doesn't throw the ball for Trevor either. You know what I'm saying? So, and it's the same thing with Liam Cohen. He didn't throw the ball for Trevor, and I thought the only thing that was going to help him was for us to change around that quarterback room, and we did. And it took us, the media to threaten a couple weapons weren't going to be with them anymore, and I think it's a culmination, man. Like sometimes a negative can result in a positive, but again, is it just for this year? Are we going to see the Trevor Lawrence that we saw the first 4
Yeah.
years show up? So that's why I'm apprehensive of the fact that he caught fire at the end of the season. But again, if we would have played the Colts that second time with Daniel Jones, would it have been different? Like would that have stopped the train at the train tracks? I don't know, but you take it for what it is because you got 17 games, you know who you're playing on the schedule, and it's the same thing that I tell everybody. You could say what you want about the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix and all those guys, but they had to play who was in front of them, regardless if you
Yep.
thought that they were a weak opponent or not. And we're looking at a Bo Nix injury where he could have been in the
Yep.
Super Bowl, So
Yeah, so it's like Jacksonville catches fire after their week 10 loss, which again was a one-score game to a division rival in the Houston Texans. And then from then on out, they went out for the regular season and then, dropped that game against Buffalo that I believe they should have won. Uh, but that's not the here nor there. And then I look at him from a statistical standpoint, and when you talk about and there there's a fairness and then there's an unfairness to saying that he was the number one pick in his draft class and everything, and I think you're a little bit foolish if you're going to um, you know, gr continue to grade the player to that standard because it's a different atmosphere in the NFL.
Mhm.
However, I look at him statistically, and there's just a lot of average. There's just a lot of average to barely above average things going on here, and it reminds me of the year that Jalen Hurts had. So it's like, completing barely 61% of your passes. He managed to throw for over 4,000 yards. Passer rating was average 91, QBR just above average at a 58. And then
Yeah.
you look at it from that standpoint, and you have to wonder to yourself, if they only played a little bit better before their winning streak, what could have what could the Jaguars have looked like if the cer if they were better in the first half of the year? And again, it goes back to the gamble that you were just talking about. It's taken him like 5 years to this point to show his true value as a quarterback, and you're on the fence as to whether you want to buy in or not when you're not really in a fully committed position to do that. So yeah, it's like rocking a hard place at this point.
Yeah, it is, man, and you know, again, I'm always to the point with any team of you are who your record says you were at the end of the season. So, I mean, I hate to keep bringing the Broncos as a conversation piece, but how many people thought that the Broncos were absolutely going to go into the playoffs and that they were fluky all year long? And again, there were one Bo Nix broken ankle away from being in the Super Bowl because a lot of people thought that they would have beat the brakes off of the Patriots. But the narrative changed once they started winning playoff games. Why is that?
Mhm.
Like they proven all season that they were the one, if not the best AFC team. And now we're having a conversation of like the Patriots would have given the Seahawks or the Broncos would have given the Seahawks a better run for their money. And it's like, why is the narrative changing now? Because everybody thought that they were fluky. So, but
Yeah.
your record says who you are
Yep.
every single time because unlike college, and we talked about college before, right? It's not like Tennessee going to go play Appalachian State. You know that Tennessee's going to beat the brakes off Appalachian State at any given time. Maybe there might be an upset over the years that comes up, whatever. That's what happens. But in the NFL, every single team is a challenge. They present their own challenges. Even the Jets are going to present their own challenge, even though they didn't get an interception all year. But I think it's more so like this team is just a little bit better than the next team, right? In the NFL. But these are still pro players that you got to play against that present different issues for your team. So I don't take any win or loss lightly for any NFL team. And I think how many times has the season going on and fans just overlook that? Like
Mhm.
you can't say, oh, we should have been better than 3-14. No, your record says that you were 3-14. Like we could sit here and argue about it until you're blue in the face, but the Jaguars were a 13-win team, regardless if I liked it or not, or thought that we should have been that record. We were that record. So in the next season, my expectation is even higher for them than it would have been last year because they've already set the precedent of like, we had an injured player here. We had a player that stepped up to the plate. We had Trevor Lawrence play the best that he's ever played. If those realistically, and me and you are very analytical, right? Like realistically, if Trevor Lawrence goes in there and he plays the way that he did those last 5 games, what's stopping us from being in the Super Bowl?
Absolutely.
So that's what my expectations next year would be if a lot of things don't change with our team, right? So we re-sign the guys that we need to re-sign. If anybody's saying that the Jacksonville Jaguars are not an NFL Super Bowl contender next year, then everybody's just been lying about how they felt about Trevor Lawrence the last 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was kind of in that position to a degree with Jalen Hurts early in his career. Unpopular opinion. I believe that they paid him a year too early. That's
mhm.
just my opinion. I'm gonna stick with that because I did not want the organization to make the same mistake that they did with Carson Wentz. Like he leads the Eagles in 17 on this magical run. He gets hurt. He doesn't finish the season out, and then but by all means, Nick Foles comes in and just does the miraculous. And on really such to that point, it was still such a small sample size for Carson, regardless of the fact that he was picked as high as he was in the first round. Um,
Mhm.
I still thought at that point for him, paying him was way too early because there wasn't enough evidence there for me to justify that type of payday. And and I thought the exact same thing about Jalen Hurts, but
I
you get to
I
two
agree with
Super
you there.
Bowls. Yeah, but you get to 2 Super Bowls. You play better than Patrick Mahomes in the first one, but you lose. I mean, yeah, you can pick on him for the turnover that he had in the fumble, and that was probably the biggest difference in that game. But you get to another one, and not only does it paint the same story as we did in 52 against New England, getting revenge on them for a previous loss against the same team, but you do it again to Kansas City, who was about to three-peat. So like it's 2
Yeah.
fantastic stories, and you can argue in a sense that Jalen paid his contract off in that regard. Um, so it's like, but again, and I'm gonna roast myself for a minute here because before I returned to the channel, I was one of those radical morons to a degree that wanted Jalen benched in this past season, but not for and for those who are interested in my opinion on that, you can watch one of my most recent videos on my channel because I talked about it. But it was not for the reasons that you think that I wanted him benched. But to the to the super chat here, when you say save quarterbacks, I can easily answer and say that it's not going to be Jalen because he's got that no trade clause stuck in his contract. So I mean, who would you consider in that category?
Yeah, Mac Jones is the first one that comes to mind for me, just how he performed when Brock Purdy was out, and I feel like somebody's still gonna see his value somewhere. But now I have this sneaking suspicion, man, because and we've seen this over the years, so I don't want to hear anybody talk about contracts because that it gets thrown out the window at so many different times, and people are willing to take on contracts and things get worked out. But I have this sneaking suspicion that the Buccaneers might entertain a trade for Baker Mayfield. I have this
Mm,
weird suspicion, man. And by the fact that like there might be a quarterback in next year's draft that they might like. They might like what they seen with Kyle Trask and want to see something a little bit different. Like,
yeah.
Emeka Ibuka is a rising guy, but like
Hmm.
let's say they trade for Mac Jones after they trade away Baker Mayfield and decide that like he might be just a little bit better than for what they need than Baker Mayfield. I don't know. But I really think Mac Jones is kind of like the safe guy. I saw Joe Milton's name thrown in there. I honestly could see a a world where people are entertaining a trade for like Dylan Gabriel, from the Browns or Deshaun Watson. You know what I'm saying? Like Kenny Pickett's still out there as well. Like got traded to the Raiders for the 3rd round pick. I mean, I think he's pretty safe in a lot of aspects, but
Two
it,
gloves picket.
yeah. I mean, he can win you a couple games. I mean,
Yeah.
did he really get a fair shake with the Pittsburgh Steelers? I mean, we really haven't seen a successful quarterback come through there that, was not Aaron Rodgers, of course. Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Famer. But really, really and truly tell me what quarterback under Mike Tomlin that he inherited Ben Roethlisberger that was good. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I don't know. When you say safe, it really has to be somebody that's proven
Right.
to win games, and you feel like, man, maybe we can mold this guy. But the one thing about Kyle Shanahan, that's another reason why I say Mac Jones. Look at Sam Darnold. I mean, Sam Darnold went from, I remember the last 4 games of this season with the Panthers, he was like one of the best quarterbacks in the league during that stretch. Then gets traded or gets picked up by the 49ers, sits behind Brock Purdy, then goes to the Vikings, gets developed even more, gets them to a 14-win season, and then does the same thing with the Seahawks, except their 14-win season got them a Super Bowl victory. But I really think Kyle Shanahan, man, if you don't think that guy is some kind of quarterback savant at this point in time, I don't know what does he have to prove? They shouldn't have won as many games as they did this year with all the injuries that they had. And they didn't win the NFC West this year, but they were, I think, because the Seahawks beat them, right? If the Seahawks didn't beat them, they would have won the AFC West on all backups, basically. That's crazy.
So let's get some classroom elements started here. This is going to be the exciting part. So, it's like the you're in there, you're in the weeds, and you're waiting for that little piece of gold in the midst of the sand. So here we go. The atmosphere is very exciting with the draft around the corner.
Yep.
In the regard of fan bases for every team to hope in the same improvements that they come up with through the use of mock drafts, free agency lists, etc. But there's a lot more to it than taking a plug and play approach.
Right.
So to you, what is one of the very first things you look at when it comes to determination of roster construction?
I always go to what everybody gives, the biggest point of emphasis on when it comes to teams not doing well. And my mind immediately goes to, well, our quarterback would be good if our offensive line was good. Right? So I go with that a lot. I mean, offensive line is important. The Bears pretty much changed their whole team around this year with not only a new coach, but what did they emphasize this offseason? Let's go and go get all offensive linemen. So I think that if you don't emphasize that, it's the single most handedly the biggest reason why you're going to lose. And I also think the same for the defensive line. I wouldn't say your defense line, your front seven. I think your front seven is more important than your DBs. And nobody could probably understand this more than Eagles fans. I think what people, how can I put this? I think when people say tackles are an overrated stat, I hate that because they're not. They're absolutely not. You guys got Zach Bond and it immediately made you a better team. The one reason why you guys couldn't get through that Super Bowl win a couple years ago, or you lost that Super Bowl because you couldn't tackle. You couldn't tackle an open space. That was one of the biggest reasons. I literally was telling my wife this. I said, the Eagles just can't tackle. They have all this talent on this team and they can't tackle.
So it's funny that you bring that up now because it was almost for a comedic purpose that I found it on X, and it turns out to be a misspelling. So this was going to be later in the program that I wanted to ask, like for entertainment purposes, where it says here, if you think so, this was supposed to say tackles. So if you think tackles are an overrated stat, ask the Eagles how their Diet Bowl win tastes from a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a
That
like
must have been a late
an
night text. Well, autocorrect.
so I was gonna be like, this would be good for the sake of entertainment, but also trying to decipher why that was, why that was said and where the value is in it, and it seems like you're
If
bringing it
anything,
up
I
right
am as
now.
I'm consistent, man, because I didn't even
Mhm.
know you were gonna pull that. And I mean, to be honest, it's so to me, it's so true. And then like the building blocks of football are not that hard to understand. Like, yeah, I mean, I could break down X's and O's till everybody's face falls off. I really don't try to
Yeah.
do that too much on our channel. I don't try to get like too much in the weeds. But some people will ask me, like, hey, what is the concept? What would this be like? And I understand it from what I understand it. And I always try to seek out more information. But at the end of the day, the fundamentals of football are if you have a strong offensive line and a strong front seven, it makes everything easier on your team. There's no bigger example that I can also give you than Sauce Gardner.
Hmm.
Quinnen Williams, Quincy Williams, all those guys that were on that front seven made his life a lot easier his years with the Jets. Let's not sit up here and kid ourselves. It did. And as soon as Quinnen Williams went to the Cowboys, their defense got better. There's no coincidence on why this is true. So I think starting a team, I would focus offensive line first, and then you can go through the history of this. And Lindy, you're around the same age as me, and we both remember this.
Hmm.
Remember
Yeah.
Rick Grossman going to a Super Bowl? You remember Trent Dilfer winning a Super Bowl? You remember Brad Johnson winning a Super Bowl? You remember Rich Gannon? Well, Rich Gannon was the MVP that season, but like Rich Gannon didn't really have that great of a career. Rich Gannon won a Super. The point is, guys, you don't need a great quarterback to have success.
It is this is a very on certain channels and networks and outlets, this is a very almost exact type of tired conversation I hear, because they always put Jalen Hurts in the same conversation with, like, you don't need a great quarterback to win a Super Bowl and what have you. So so again, again, much like the post on X, it's funny that the exact same talking point is being brought up, but for a very different reason.
Yeah.
And and you talk about the defensive line in that regard. Well, it's, that's what is part of why football is the ultimate team sport, because of how every single position relies on each other so strongly. So it's like you take the D line for example. Well, is and excuse me, sacks are a very good context clue to me as to how well a secondary plays versus how well defensive line plays.
Mhm.
Is it a sack that's the result of a rush, or is it a sack that's a result of just very good coverage that the quarterback has nobody to go to, and they're sitting in the pocket longer trying to wait for somebody to get open, and well, too little too late, it ends up being a coverage sack because your corners are so good at what they do, being very sticky to the receiver. And that's what it makes me think of, is, the just the ultimate team element there, that if everything is working in unison, that's a defense that's very hard to stop. But if again, if you do not value the if you do not value specific positions correctly, the dominoes fall at that point one by one, and you're not going to be as successful.
Can you let me ask you a question? So nobody can ever give me a great reason why there's a difference between these two. What's
Oh,
really the
no.
difference between a tackle for loss and a sack?
What's the difference between the two of them?
Yeah, like when it really comes, let's say the linebacker tackles the running back for a tackle for a loss of 5 yards. Let's say that the next play somebody sacks the quarterback for a loss of 5 yards. What really was the difference between those two plays, and why does sacks get over glorified more than tackles for loss?
I'm not really sure. I mean, it's a tough one, but for me, I would say like defensively, there's almost no difference because they're both positive plays. The only time contextually it would be different is if the sack did not result in a loss, and much like the same goes for a rush when the running back gets it. If they get stuffed at the line of scrimmage for no gain, it's almost the exact same thing as getting a sack for a loss of zero. Like the quarterback gets stuck at the line of scrimmage. So I don't really see a concrete difference between the two, other than the fact that maybe for style points, that's why the sack is glorified the way it is. But at the
Mhm.
same time, it's just as strong as a defensive play to get a tackle for loss, because the defensive line is doing its job and plugging the holes up, being one step ahead of the offensive line. So it's like they go hand in hand with each other. Not to mention the fact that it's still it's still considered a sack if the quarterback even gets like a 2 yard gain. As long as he still has the ball, it's still considered a sack for whoever tackles him. So it's like,
Yep.
so there's
I always
really,
break it
yeah, there's no difference.
I always break it down like this. If I showed you a stat sheet and it said this play went for negative 5 yards,
Mm-hmm.
nobody would know the difference and even care. It would just
No.
be like, "Oh, that's a great defensive stop." So, a cheat code for linebackers is look for how many tackles for loss they had.
Yep.
And that tells you a lot about the player right there. The one reason why I was like so high on Edgerrin Cooper a couple years coming out the draft, because I didn't care if he got a ton of sacks, because he had as much tackles for loss than the highest edge rusher in the class had sacks. And I was like, well, there's not really a difference outside of the quarterback being hit. And I mean, if you want to come down to psychologically, you could say, well, it might rattle the quarterback. Well, and I see what you're saying, Torque, in the comments about, yeah, the running back's going to get hit. Yeah, that's true too. But the result of the play, if I was to put it out on a play sheet and not even tell you if it was a tackle for loss or a sack, nobody would care. People would be like, damn, we had a good play that round. But the thing that negates that completely out of both of them is getting a first down. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
even matter what happened. I mean, that's for any play, right? But nothing to me rings more true than just like that. So when it comes to like, I think turnovers are super important. I think everybody knows that. A lot of games come down to penalties and turnovers are like the biggest thing. But I ain't never seen. I mean, how many games did the Browns lose this year, even though Myles Garrett got 4 or 5 sacks? It didn't
Yeah.
matter. He even said the same thing. Yeah, I might have got 5 sacks this game, but I'd rather have won the game.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we glorify sacks so much? You know, like,
That's the exact thing I was just thinking in my mind right now, that you can take almost every statistic, and you can analyze them like play by play, and they're completely contextual. So
Mhm.
it's like, again, you mentioned the sack thing, and then you mentioned the means of tackle for loss. Yes, it looks great on paper for an individual player, but as a collective, when it comes to a defense, that happens in a specific down. The only time where it really matters is if that possession for the opposing team, defensively, either results in a turnover or forcing them to punt the ball.
Yep.
If they keep moving the chains, it almost doesn't matter. Even if it results in 3 points, that's still a win to a degree for a defense because you're only giving up the field goal, which isn't a guarantee all the time, depending on the skill of your kicker. But if you know, I could keep I could keep going with it, but it's those sort of things that are very easy to overlook, and you can make an argument for for any other sport too in that regard. Um, Basketball comes to mind with multiple different things. I can think of a defender getting a steal and you get the ball in that situation, but if you don't make the basket and the other team rebounds it, well, who cares that you got the steal? And it's like at the end of the day, did you win the game or did you lose the game? But it does benefit you to say that again with linebackers and defensive linemen or whatever when you're talking about tackles for losses and sacks, the value is in your contribution. So that's one of the biggest components there when it comes to those two elements, I would say. And then when you
Yeah,
talk about go ahead.
no, I was gonna say real quick. I would say probably one of the most valuable plays in football is a tackle for loss that results in a fumble from a running back's perspective.
Yeah,
Be-
much to the point of this. Yeah.
Yeah, because like if I'm getting blindside hit it as a quarterback and you strip sack me, then it's like, oh, that was a great play. Nobody's saying that a turnover is not going to be a great play, but the
Mhm.
more impressive play is a linebacker bearing down on a running back that's supposed to get tackled all the time, and then you make that dude fumble as well. Like
Yep.
to me, that's like, damn, that was a huge play because the level of difficulty on having that guy fumble is much higher than blindsiding a quarterback on coming around the edge, in my opinion. But I mean, in that aspect, if you really want to make the argument and pull scenarios out, it's like that might be more valuable to a team than getting a strip sack on the quarterback, hitting them from a blind side. Because he's not going to expect that impact, but the running back definitely does, and he shouldn't
Mhm.
fumble at all.
So I think when it comes to roster, I also feel it's fair to say that I do tend to see the side of the gaming world aspect too, where fans like to work through some of the same things, whether it's on Madden or the resurrected college football series of games. And while they're a great tool in that regard, they do not teach absolutely everything, which that's not their intention to begin with, of course. So when I initially thought of roster construction, another element that sometimes gets overlooked is the collection of coaches. We also see this at the collegiate level where the philosophy has to match the players and vice versa, depending on the goals of the program, because not every one of them, unfortunately, can be competitive, much like the difference in the divisions of schools and conferences and divisions of the collegiate teams in their
Mhm.
programs for in that regard.
That's a good point.
So how hard is that exactly? And where in that regard is the best place to start when it comes to when it comes to developing a collection of coaches?
I think even more so, that's probably the hardest thing to do for a team is for the coach to get out of his own way and really go with the best guy, right? I mean, let's say that you've been my defensive coordinator for years, Lindy, or you're
Mhm.
my positional coach. I'm more likely to pick up the phone and call you because of our relationship more than going to go get the young guy that's been innovative in college that I'm like, damn, his this guy's been killing it at Georgia, like a
Mhm.
Dan Lanning, for example. He's a head coach now at Oregon. But man, I'd rather go get Dan Lanning and run my defense in a lot of aspects because it's worked and he's done it with a big team. They won national championships. Nah, I'm gonna go get Lindy though, because I trust him. He's gonna be able to run my system. So I think it really depends on like who's really gonna, coaching the coaching staffs in general are just a lot of like relationship based, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard not to pick up the phone and call your homeboy and be like,
Yep.
man. It's kind of like when I got my one homeboy the job where we're working, man. When I picked up the phone, like, yo, apply here, man. I could definitely get you on. It's cool to be on the Zoom calls and things and working out problems and working with one of
Right.
your best friends than it is to go with a complete stranger. But I think the best things happen with guys like Sean McVay when he goes and hires guys based off of what they can bring value. And that's why these coaches go off and be head coaches and coordinators at other places and do well, because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the relationship. He cares about who's got the best idea in the room always wins. And if we can work together and you can be objective to the fact that like maybe we could do something better, I'm willing to hear you out. I think those are the best teams. The the Kyle Shanahans of the world. Like, do y'all really think that him and Robert Saleh meet eye to eye on everything? Hell no. There is no way in hell. But the way they worked their things out this year, and I mean, obviously he called them up after he got fired because they originally had success together. Why not? They've been to a Super Bowl together. But that makes sense in that aspect because you have accolades together that are proven. But I just think like when new coaches get started, or like, if Vic Fangio was to be a coach again, a head coach somewhere, you don't think he's going to be able to call up his homeboys like, hey, I know we used to run this back in 1989. You ready to roll this back? No, cover three defenses and shit like that don't work anymore. They just don't. So I think the coaching staffs are definitely probably the most difficult to build, because it's a lot of that. Let's bring my family in to help run, and so I can kind of poke them around and tell them what to do, versus being the Sean McVays of the world that are constantly getting guys promoted, constantly putting other head coaches in the league, and constantly always putting on his Rolodex new shit that he's never thought of before. Because the best head coaches are the ones that are going to be able to take criticism, the ones that are going to be able to find new ideas, and the ones that are going to be able to help shape these guys into saying, we have an open door policy all the time. I'm going to let you run the house the way you want to. And then we're going to come together if it doesn't work and figure out what really does work for our team. Those are the coaches that have the best success, in my opinion.
Two things. For Eagles fans in here, there's two things going on. Well, number one, to stay positive, the easy example to give here in terms of coaching, because a lot of times the mentality is when you got the successful track work, when you got the successful track record, it's a if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. Jeff Stoutland, for about 13 years, as cementing himself as one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. And you can go to the Eagles official website and everything and get a glimpse of everything that he has accomplished. And I think it was something like 26 Pro Bowl selections for offensive linemen and everything in his career, which is unbelievable. All pro selections, all that sort of thing. So he's like one of the easiest examples I can make when you talk about that sort of thing for coaching. But the examples you gave for the head coach and some of the three key factors, and I'm thinking about it, and I got to ask Eagles fans here, and I'm thinking on paper and on the surface, of course, because it would be ignorant to create any conclusions without knowing the internal scope, only the external scope. Does Nick Sirianni do any of those three things? Certainly, it doesn't seem like it to me. And that's why it's been a teeter-totter as to, do we want to keep him here? Do we not want to keep him here? And unfairly, to an extent, Jalen Hurts is on that same teeter-totter for different reasons. But
Was
but
this
it
the
just
sixth coordinator?
yeah.
That's insane.
I think he's
I,
had I think he's had over, I think he's had over what is it? Over a dozen to this point since high school.
and for him to
I
play
think
as
that's
well
the
as he's been
number.
playing, man, I'll never understand the hate for him, bro.
But but now so now that everything is put together, I assume the next hardest thing is seeing that vision through to where the success is taken off the paper, so to speak, and put into work.
Mhm.
Because I would say, yeah, it's almost it's twofold because you can say it's simple to, to compile the talent, to compile the coaching staff, and once everything is in place, you get stuck in your high means of aspirations, and you're like, everyone is just mentally prepared. Oh, we're set to win X amount of games. And well, it might not even happen.
Right.
So to think of that, that has to be the next hardest thing to me is projecting the vision, creating the vision, and then seeing it through. So
Yeah. He's got a difficult, he's got a difficult track record for sure, in my opinion, because his biggest criticism as a head coach is, am I the problem? Because how
mhm.
many people has he cycled in there, and then you expect guys to get developed, and then you just leave guys like Jalen Hurts out there to dry one, and this is his sixth offensive coordinator, and by all regards, you could have a worse quarterback in place, to be honest with you. And so, I mean, he's not a developer of any coordinator. Let's just put it like that. Like Kellen Moore he didn't have to be developed. He knew what. That's why he's a head coach right now. It took him 1 year to come in, get you guys where you need to go. Peace out. I'm going to be the head coach of the Saints. He needs guys like that it seems like, to be successful, in my opinion.
One of the biggest things to me that keeps getting overlooked, though, is, and again, I don't fault a lot of the fan base that I'm a part of. I don't fault them in delving back to miserable times. However, Nick Sirianni was brought to the organization to fix Carson Wentz. He was supposed, and this was a part of that experiment. And
Yeah.
Carson was like, "No, thanks, I'm out." So he was okay with the trade and everything, and that's when, that's the whole thing with when it happened with the Colts. But Sirianni didn't come for Jalen Hurts. He was brought in for Carson Wentz. So
Yeah.
it's but again, I don't fault people for for not wanting to get back to that misery. But
Yeah, I don't blame him
so
either.
so to conclude in this manner, up to this point, from a draft perspective, and you know understanding that the the amount of the amount of different things that Gridiron Apex has been able to do, and seeing you guys go to the Senior Bowl and hearing about your upcoming combine visits and everything, and just the amount of depth that you get into year in and year out from, with the college football season. Where do you see the most strength lying in terms of position in this draft class? Uh, some of the prospects you have been able to interview, or players who will have the easiest transition from college to the pros?
That's a good question. This year's draft is very unique, because it's very weak at a lot of different places.
Hmm.
I think where it's very strong is offensive line. I don't think the offensive linemen in this draft are not getting enough love for how good they actually are, to be honest. I think there's a lot of undersized guys that can play. Like one of my favorite centers in this class is Parker Brailsford out of Alabama. I mean, he's 290 soaking wet, but like holds his own all the time. Didn't let Ty Simpson really get touched this year. But Caden Proctor, his left tackle, gets a lot of love because of his size. And it's like he wasn't as productive. He was really giving up more sacks and getting beat more than the smallest guy on the offensive line. So, and you know me, I'm not an intangibles guy. I don't care how big, how tall. I'll always throw that out of my evaluation. And maybe that's a flaw of mine, but I
The
don't
Chip
really
Kelly measurables.
yeah. I don't really care, you know? Like,
Oh man.
I know it's all
Measuring what was he measuring? Friggin' measuring wrists or something or that sort of thing. Oh my goodness.
yeah, it's like
Oh.
it's so stupid to me. But you know, if a guy can play, he can play. I think offensive line is very strong and people are not talking about it. I think this linebacker class is kind of top heavy, but they're pretty strong there as well. But I would honestly say, man, the tight ends are pretty strong. It's either going to be between the safeties or the wide receivers, in my opinion.
Wow, okay.
A lot of great wide receivers in this class that, I mean, we don't really have like a I know a lot of people love Jeremiah Smith and the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s of the world and all those guys, and Jeremiah Smith's not coming out until next year, hopefully. But there's not really a guy that like screams off the chart like, oh my God, he's going to be like the next best thing. But I think that that's great for all of these guys because all of them bring something unique. Like Carnell Tate, to me, is the number one out of Ohio State. He's not this exciting guy, but like he does everything really good and is going to be a great number one receiver on the team. And he's going to be like Terry McLaurin when he got drafted to the Commanders, not to compare to the Ohio State guy, but like Terry McLaurin was really fast, but nobody was saying like, oh, he's going to light it up. I actually talked about him when he came out that draft that year. Don is my witness. I was like, Terry McLaurin might be one of my favorite receivers that comes out. And he ended up being obviously a number one guy for the Commanders. So I think he has that potential. Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State, obviously, is probably the most hoorah guy here that everybody's like, well, if he stays healthy, he would be a clear number one. You know, and even guys like Ted Hurst out of Georgia State, got to watch him at the Senior Bowl this year, and I was like, man, that dude's really, really good. Malachi Phillips from Notre Dame. I know I'm throwing a lot of names out there, but like the one guy that I'm gonna have to use as a baseline here, and I would say is one of the best prospects in this entire draft class, tore his ACL towards the end of the season, and it's Chris Bell out of Louisville. He's such a good receiver, and I hope that young man gets healthy because if he doesn't lose a step in his recovery, he's going to be a number one receiver, and he's going to be great for a long, long, long time. So even I'm talking about the hurt guys right now being in really high regard in there. And so if that kind of tells you like their value there, you know, and then you go over to the safeties. I mean, everybody loves Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs he's the number one guy in this class. Like he's Troy Polamalu 2.0. I know a lot of people say Ed Reed, but like, no, he's Troy Polamalu 2.0. And he might be better than Troy Polamalu in his career. Then you got, you know, guys like Bud Clark out of TCU, Dylan Thieneman, who, you know, transferred from Purdue to Oregon. He might run like a 4.3 in the combine. He's so damn fast. It just goes so deep. But probably my favorite defensive player in this whole class, man, to be honest with you, is the linebacker Jake Golday out of Cincinnati. He is just the old school. I compare him to Zach Thomas that played him for the Miami Dolphins. That's who he reminds me of, just a quicker version of Zach Thomas, man. But the linebackers they're insane too. So it's not a sexy class. Let's just put it like that, because obviously leading the sexy draft classes are the the high echelon quarterbacks, and we don't have that. Um, but I will say that Fernando Mendoza is not my favorite.
Mm,
He's not even my number two. I
mm.
have Ty Simpson out of Alabama as my number one. I have Drew Aller as my number two out of Penn State. And I have Fernando Mendoza as my number three as far as the quarterbacks right now. And then number four would be Sawyer Robertson, because I watched him first, but like I'm sure other quarterbacks are going to trump him as well. But yeah, again, is it a great quarterback class? No. I don't know. Good luck, Raiders. If you're drafted Fernando Mendoza, I wish that young man nothing but success, dude. He's such a great guy.
Yeah.
But I just don't see his level of talent like I see like a Darian Mensah that's going to be playing at Miami this year. There's not a quarterback like that in this class, So, but we'll see, man. That's what makes this exciting, because we get to focus on
Mhm.
everybody else this year. You know what I'm saying? It's not the glorified quarterback this year, so we get to focus on everybody else, and I'm so happy about that.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking is, when you say that, there isn't that one person that immediately takes all of the spotlight and all of the fixation. It makes me think of that the class itself, although it has its weak points, in this regard, it's probably more quantitative than it is quantitative. That there's
Mhm.
that there's more bodies that are, lesser star recruits, for that matter, than than few fives and a bunch of twos, or in this case it could be more fours and three and a halves and that sort of thing. And like every organization can have a piece of the pie, instead of trying to fight for limited best players available. So it almost it seems that the class kind of stretches into the deeper rounds instead of being top heavy. Is
Yep.
that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I honestly think day 3 of the draft is gonna be probably the lowest viewership that we've seen ever.
Oh wow, okay.
I just don't, outside of guys like me that are gonna see a lot of these guys that I've watched throughout the years and gonna be it's almost like at this one time I've been doing this for so long now that
Hmm.
it's almost like watching, you know, the kid across the street that you watched since he was a little kid grow up to be an adult, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm happy for the guys, and I want to see him have great. I want to see all these guys have great careers, regardless of my evaluation on them. One thing I look forward to is like my evaluation being wrong,
Right.
because it makes me better for the next year. Focus on what didn't I get right about this guy. Like Christian Gonzalez kicked my ass. I thought he was going to suck. I really thought he was gonna suck balls, man. Like I'm not even gonna lie to you, but he's a top 10 corner in the league, if not top 5,
Yeah.
if not top 3 to a lot of people. And so obviously missed something, and that makes me go on to sharpen the pencil. But I
Yep.
don't wish any of these guys not success, but that's not realistic. It's not. Over 300 guys are gonna be new faces in the NFL, and half of those guys are not even going to be on NFL rosters. That's just the reality of it. So, but yeah, day 3 is going to be way boring for people. But hey, I'm gonna be at the draft in Pittsburgh, so I'm gonna be clapping for those young men as they go across the stage, like if I was at their high school graduation. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be happy for them. So we'll see what happens.
Imagine the Saints draft both Love and Bell to go with Tyler Shaw.
Oh, I would love that. I'm a Tyler Shuck guy, man. So I would love that.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was great to touch upon quite a few different avenues and
Mhm.
add value to the show, with the hope of it being something people can refer back to as knowledge for the game of football that can be touched upon going forward. Again, I wanted to do something different And once more, Dante, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the program, in being one of the first to reopen the Touchdown Talk series for what is honestly a season 2, if you will. And
Yeah.
what we've been able to accomplish in the time frame, we kind of started on a high note here, because I didn't really have I didn't have a projection or an expectation on how long it was going to go on for, but I wanted to make sure that I compiled enough of a good balance of questions to not only have people to not only allow people to have fun in the conversation, but to also give them a bit of good knowledge going forward, to help them, to help them sharpen their minds and whatnot, such as on the thumbnail it says picking brains. And one of the better guys that I know that does it very well for a number of years, and what Dante has built over there for Gridiron Apex. So again, once more, for those for those that might tune in later who don't know, and give a people a shout on where you can be found from here on out, and again, what you ultimately provide.
Yeah, man. So, one thing I pride myself on is like the SEO, how to find us easy, right? So, I always tell people, go to Google, type in Gridiron Apex, all of our stuff's gonna come up, man. One thing that I'm especially proud of this year is the draft guide that we're putting together. I don't think that there is an in-depth, not a better in-depth look than what I'm giving to people right now, as far as as far as the all 22 that you can get for free, that I don't charge a dime for. Well, I do charge for the for the full preview, but you do get a lot a lot better view and a breakdown of where these players are. Not anything that's not an easy read, for sure. I try to break it down like if I was talking to somebody that doesn't know about the X's and O's. I think that's important too. But yeah, on YouTube, Gridiron Apex. I'm not on Instagram a whole lot, but we're over there. TikTok, we got a pretty sizable following over there, and then X, where I'm super active. It's at Gridiron Apex as well. So, but yeah, man, I definitely appreciate you having me on, man. And yeah, this thing is growing, and kind of my future outlook is just keep bringing the content. And one of the things is like you might come to our stream, you might see me banter with somebody that might that might come in there and be disrespectful. I go right back at them, and people think that's pretty entertaining. But outside of that, man, we try not to take ourselves too seriously a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And I think some of the film studies are some of the most fun, because sometimes we get off on a side tangent and get right back to the film. But I think you need those comedic moments, to let people know that, like, we're not robots either. You know what I'm saying? All of us have got our quirks and things like that. But that's one of those things that I've kind of, kind of pulled back on, or let loose on a little bit over the years, is we don't have to be super professional all the time. People know who we are, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. If you do, we appreciate you. So, but yeah, if you go into this, if I had to give any advice for anybody, if you go into this thing that 100% of the people are going to like you, you've misunderstood yourself. Not you, that 100% of the people, you see that viewer count go up, and you see 40 people in the chat.
Yeah.
If you think every single one of those people is going to hit subscribe, you're kidding yourself. So
yeah.
So just go in there and just be you, and people are going to follow you, man. And I see a lot of my mods and stuff in the chat that came through and supported this too. So I appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys go to the description to hit the link and subscribe to Lenny. Let's get them to what you're at 270 now, I believe.
It's been fluctuating, to your point, of course, but if I mean,
286, let's get them to 300, man.
Yeah. In my infancy, I think my focus was a little bit different, and it was skewed to where I was worried about it at first, but I'm really not anymore, because sometimes it's something that's out of my control. Although although we are, we are responsible for what we do, to either make things better, adapt, keep it the same, or get worse. But again, to Red Feather's point here in her in the comment, it's like, the pleasure is all of mine, and I'm not one to allow my, my friendships and relationships on the platform to deteriorate, or get them to a point where they're ultimately devalued. That's something I just ultimately can't do. And when I recognize a level of talent, it's got to be put out there for the right reasons. So,
Yeah.
again, the pleasure is mine for, to allow, to have me have that opportunity to just, again, picking brains, but it's appreciating the intelligence behind it, and knowing somebody that, puts the work in, that can provide the value that, some overlook when they're in these time frames of having fun with their football teams from the collegiate and the NFL level. Draft time's an exciting time. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's even more exciting than the playoffs, because it's like, is our team going to take the next step or not? So yeah, this was a very valuable stream, not only for us two in creating it, but for anybody else that was in the stream while it was live, or if they tune in later. And
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
that's the ultimate goal for this one and any others going forward. But again once more, everybody, a big thank you for participating in the resurrection of Touchdown Talk, in, well, a season 2, if you will, bringing it back with yours truly, Lindy Endzone here, and of course Dante, uh, for Gridiron Apex. Again, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. Take care. It is late over here on the east side of the U.S. at 11:30 p.m. So I will bid you all farewell. Thanks once more, and take care, everybody. Have a good
See you
night.
guys.